coinciding with that US Open Cup interview comes the announcement of US Open Cup rules. New 2024 rules have dropped, including a restructure of payments and the roster rules for the MLS Next Pro sides. So let's discuss. Firstly, a huge shout out to our friends at the cup.us for compiling all of this information in one easy place to find. Head on over there to get the rundown, US Open Cup facts, history. I mean, it's a great website. I have used it far more than I probably should have for a guy who needs to finish a thesis in 3 weeks. But alas, here we are. Let's go in order here, right? We're going to start with the thing that MLS is holding up as the impact that they left on the cup from withdrawing, right? Look at what we made happen by not being here. The hosting fees have been revamped, and it actually shows, as we were mentioning earlier, why MLS owners had such a problem with this cup in the first place. So as we mentioned, to pay the refs, the prize money, the travel, a set fee plus a percentage of the revenue over a certain threshold was taken, leaving the clubs with whatever is left, right? So I'll just give a rundown here, and then I'll ask kind of what your thoughts are on the change. So right now, or what it was last time, the first round, $750 of a hosting fee, plus 15% of any revenue you made above 100K. Realistically, you're not selling $100,000 worth of tickets, my guess, at least in the first round anyway. So you're holding on to most of that money. Get all the way up to the final, as we were alluding to before, it was $325,000 just to host the thing, which is $25,000 more than what you would have won if you won the thing, plus half of any revenue made above $375,000. So, and that, again, an interesting note, right? Anyways, now the 3 rounds, the first 3 rounds that you would have your hosting for $1,000, $1,000, and $5,000 flat. Anything you make above $100,000 or $200, whatever, you keep it, right? So you're just paying the flat fee and you're gone. After that, the flat fee goes away and it's just a percentage of the revenue. So 30% for the round of 32, 40% thereafter, and it doesn't go any higher. While that probably allows for a little less in the pockets of teams in terms of ticket revenue, you're probably getting profit out of those games because you don't have that flat fee taking out a ton of money. Thoughts on those moves, and then we'll go to travel after that.
I mean, maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but it almost feels like the changes have hurt the lower league teams more now than it does MLS. I mean, I see the benefit for MLS, considering they're usually the teams in the semifinals and final. And so the 40% of all event net revenue versus the flat fee plus 50% over a certain threshold. That's definitely a benefit to them, but we're looking at now, like you said, like the chance of being over 100,000 in net revenue for the first or second round is pretty low. Um, First round is a small bump up. Second round is actually a cut. Most it looks like for 1,500, most likely, assuming you didn't go above 100,000. And then I see like for third round of 32, round of 16, quarterfinals, it had the flat fee, which we had talked about. Actually, no, I take back what I said. Now that I read through it more, I think it looks beneficial all around for all teams involved. If anything, I actually am going to completely counteract what I said before. I think it's probably beneficial for the lower league teams because if you are one of those teams that makes it to the round of 32, round of 16, you don't have that flat fee anymore that you have to pay. Like if you're when Sacktown made their run and went pretty far, like I don't remember how many games they were hosting, but if they were hosting any of those later rounds, that's a large fee that was going to be hit to them, regardless of how much they actually made out of that game. And now it's just all dependent on how much they make out of the game, which I think is much better. It's much more realistic. I think it's beneficial for everybody involved. So I think it's a good change.
Yeah, totally, right? Like again, less in the pockets in terms of what your revenue would have been, but really at the end of the day, it's a net positive, right? You're hosting without this flat fee that's taking away tons of money. And again, and this is it benefits everybody, right? If you're a lower league team making it all the way to let's say the quarterfinals, right? Let's say you're a lower league team, and by that I mean a USL2 team, right? You make some magic run into the later rounds. Even let's go to the round of 32, right? That 18,000, or heck, let's go even deeper. Let's go to the third round. Let's say you win the first two rounds. You're a USL2 team. You really are just a for lack of a better term, a summer league team, right? A lot of the USL2 teams are teams that play in the summer, right? $12,000 if you get paired up with an MLS team says, I'm not going to host that. I'm going to go play somewhere else, right? And then all of that revenue that you could have brought in from your fans coming in to see that goes away. Now you're just saying, hey, you're gonna go in. You can market the heck out of it, bring whoever you want, extend your whatever, and all we're gonna do is we're gonna take 30% of whatever you make, and the rest stays in your pocket. Massive win, right? Now because there were so many of these arguments, right? Like, oh, the lower league team always 100% should host the upper league team, and I love that. I would love for that to happen. But if this was the structure where you're saying, yeah, you're going to do that, but you're also going to have to pay $18,000 if you're in the round of 32 just to have the thing go on, plus anything that you make above 100,000, we're also taking some of it. That de-incentivizes the lower league teams from doing that. So I think it's a massive win to get this restructured, a massive positive in the grand scheme of things. Again, net revenue is going to be what it is, but first of all, you cut the percentages down from the semifinals and the finals. Realistically, and I'm sure they've done the math on this, the 30% and the 40% is probably less than that flat fee from the round of 16 on, right? $25,000, 40% of net revenue probably is less than $25,000, depending on who you are, right? So, end of the day, more teams are getting money in their pocket. That's great. The other thing that they said was that the tournament is now able to improve travel reimbursement. Again, a massive win for the lower league, mainly amateur and semi-pro sides, right? A flat $15,000 value until the finals where it became $30,000. That's what it used to be. Now everything starts at 20 and you're increasing all the way up to $90,000 if you make it to the finals. 3 times the reimbursement of the previous system. It's another win, right? The more that you can incentivize teams that this is going to be a competition that benefits them instead of costs them, it's a win. So I'm really a big fan of those.
Yeah, I don't think there's a debate on that. It's just more money across the board. So there's really not much for me to add on that.
I'm just giving you that space to share your thoughts and speak to the world, Connor. You do what you want to do. The next move, and the one that really matters the most here, that I think it's the best move outside of the money that they made, because they did a couple of other things, but MLS Next Pro teams have a different roster restriction than others, right? So this rule, and I'll read through them. I'll get your thoughts on it. Basically, it prevents MLS from MLSing this thing to the moon, right? So first, here are the rules to be on an MLS Next Pro team and play in the US Open Cup. Firstly, you must be on a loan of 90 days at a minimum prior to 2 p.m. Central Time the day before. So if you want to throw your team, you're a big player down, get ready to lose them for 90 days. Secondly, cannot be above the maximum salary budget charge, which I think is like $685,000. So if you're making more than that on the salary charge, see ya. You can't play either. Then they also have to be averaging less than 15 minutes of MLS play. So that cuts basically the majority of the group out. Again, massive, great. And then no more than 7 players on loan from the first team, which, based on the criteria we just read, I don't think many teams have that, even 7 players that would fit that category. So, maybe Red Bull, but that's probably about it. Thoughts on the moves?
It makes sense, right? Like, if you didn't put these rules in place, then MLS could, like you said, MLS it and just send all their first team players down there and just dominate the tournament through their next pro teams or whatever. And I think it makes sense. I think it's again incentivizing teams who are probably going to have these younger players on the first team that just aren't really playing too much, maybe more so just training with the team. I think those are the guys that they're going to target towards being able to move down to the next pro teams for this tournament. I'd be surprised if we see many of these types of moves at all. I just don't think it's necessarily worth it for an MLS team to move someone um, for 90 days just for the US Open Cup tournament. I think at this point, if you're already sending your next pro team, you might as well just commit to it and send your next pro team. I don't think sending somebody on your first team who plays less than 15 minutes a game is really going to absolutely change things completely. The only thing I can maybe think of is if like someone just comes back from a long-term injury and this is a good way for them to kind of rehab. But that's about it. So I think the move makes a lot of sense. I think it's a good move from a US Open Cup perspective, like from their side of things. It makes sense. It was a good move to kind of like stay firm on your stance on everything here against MLS's actions.
Yeah, right. Listen, I like that they came in and dropped these. I like that because it would be so MLS to have an MLS team or an MLS Next Pro team get all the way to the finals against some USL team, and then they send their entire first team on loan for 5 days to win the cup. Right? That would be par for the MLS course. I mean, the last time a USL team made the final, Orlando City went and spied on a USL team. They sent scouts to watch their training sessions so that they can know what to prepare for. Like they MLS the crap out of this tournament, day in and day out, right? So if you're going to try and throw a fit to keep your teams out of this competition, you don't want to be there. This prevents you from going back and switching it up when it's convenient to you. So I like that. They wanted out. They wanted their number twos in the tournament. They get it, and that's all they're going to get. So I'm a big fan of that. It seems like there's also a slight change in the way that the pairings were drawn. The third round, something called draw groups are introduced. So all USL championship teams drawn to play a lower level non-USL championship side, which is a little funny to me because the big sticking point when this first MLS teams are coming back into the US Open Cup was that MLS sides were not being paired with other MLS sides until they absolutely had to, which is exactly what USL Championship is doing when they enter. So, I mean, what are we doing, right? I don't know. I found a little giggle out of that. In the fourth and fifth rounds, there's a 4-team mini bracket constructed. So one MLS team, one USL Championship team, and then two winners from the third round, whoever they may be, matched up geographically to the best of their ability. Once the fourth round is over, the fifth round takes place between the two winners of this mini bracket. And then finally, from the quarterfinals onward, it's a final 8. So winner, East and West, winner goes on, loser goes home. So not too many massive changes there. I just thought it was kind of interesting to share. And then the last big one I took here, and I'm moving past this government change or the governance change, which seems to be a really big talking point, but I don't have enough information on what it was beforehand. It seems like they just replaced the people who were in charge and didn't release their names. I don't know. Everybody's kind of using that as the tinfoil conspiracy theory, like, oh, they're not releasing the names. It means it must be all MLS and MLS is getting away with everything because relax, right? So good and bad in what this change is. The US Open Cup still has a Champions League spot. However, there are a couple caveats here. If the winner of the US Open Cup does the double and qualifies via another means, the runner up makes the Champions Cup. If they both qualify in another way, the next highest team in the MLS Supporters Shield standing qualifies, and I think that's how it used to be beforehand. The thing I don't love about this, and I want to hear your thoughts on it, CONCACAF has the ability to award this spot to the MLS team if their MLS Next Pro side wins it. Thoughts on that?
I mean, to be honest, I would be pretty surprised if an MLS Next Pro team won this, considering there are, what is it, 8 or so MLS teams that have committed to playing. I think even if they rotate half their team, maybe even the full thing, I think they'll probably still beat the MLS Next Pro teams. So I would be very surprised if we're even put in a situation where an MLS Next Pro team wins it for their first team. But I can see where there might be frustration for people on that because now you're kind of like rewarding the teams that didn't even decide to show up. So I definitely I would probably err on that side as well. I think it seems a little bit far-fetched for you to just not show up and then still get a reward out of it at the end of the day. So I think it would be really cool if that spot ended up with a USL team. I'd love to see them competing in CONCACAF Champions League. Um, so yeah, I think that's pretty much my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I hate this, right? This was the worst possible outcome of this whole debacle, right? MLS is going to back out. They're going to send their kids. And if their kids pull it off, magical as it may be, they're going to reap the rewards of a Champions League spot without putting in the effort, which I think is totally, completely, and utterly wrong.
Well,
If you are,
let me ask you this though. What do you think are the chances that an MLS Next Pro team actually goes on to win the whole thing?
don't know, I'll be honest with you, because I haven't watched enough MLS Next Pro to see it. I don't think it's very likely, right? That being said, the fact that it's still a possibility is the problem, right? The whole negative PR on this thing is MLS is going to not fulfill their PLS requirements, which is a whole nother debacle we really haven't gotten into. But that's because it really was never on the table as much as people want to say it. US soccer wasn't going to do it. Not really much effort to dive into it. Whether they should have or not, that's another story. MLS wants to do what they want and still get the rewards of the Champions League, still get the rewards of the, you know, earning the title, right? Like let's say Huntsville wins it for Nashville. Nashville is going to put that on their resume, right? Possibly, hypothetically, I don't know if they would, right? But getting all of the plaudits without putting in the work, the effort, or what it means is wrong, in my opinion. I don't think it's the right thing to do. I think it's the wrong thing to do. So I think that's the worst possible outcome. If an MLS Next Pro side wins it, let's say it's the Town FC, right? Because they just rebranded as Earthquakes 2, because we're going to talk about that next episode, actually. So make sure you subscribe for that. If the Town FC wins it, the Town FC should be the team that goes into the Champions League, whether they get killed or not. Like that's not the point of this, but the point is, right? That's like, I don't know. I just think it's wrong. I was going to make another comparison, but I don't think I have one. Right? It's just if you're going to send your next pro to the tournament that qualifies you for a championship, don't send your pros for the championship if they qualify. You know what I mean?
I mean, I don't know if there's I think with the rules that US Open Cup has put in place on what players can be transferred into the next pro team, I still think we're talking about a really low percentage chance that an MLS Next Pro team wins this whole thing. I think
Sure,
it's
but
very unlikely. And I personally don't see an issue with a team like an organization celebrating it. So like if like you said, if Huntsville wins it for Nashville, I don't see an issue with Nashville celebrating it because it's still part of their organization. But I definitely still agree with it shouldn't be the like Nashville team that's in CCL reaping the rewards from it for not even showing up.
here's what I'm, right? Like we're sitting here saying like, oh, it's such a low percentage. Bro, this is MLS. Stuff happens out of the blue like every other week, right?
I still don't you remember when the two teams were in USL? Like they were never they were never consistently winning the top of the USL. I remember plenty of two teams that were like rock bottom of USL championship. And you're adding in again all these USL championship sides again who previously these two teams couldn't really compete with. Maybe some of them were okay. Some of them were like mid-table. I know Red Bull 2 was not always towards the bottom. They were usually mid-table, I'd say.
We
But
got bad after we brought all the kids up.
yeah, that's fair. But then you're now tagging on another like 8 MLS sides who are most likely going to play enough first team players that they're probably not losing to an MLS Next Pro side. Like it would have to be some ridiculous run for them for a Next Pro side to win it. So and I'm going to stick by that. And if it does happen, then feel free to clip away, clip this clip as many times as you want. But I think it is super unlikely to see a side win it all, a next pro side win it all.
I sure hope so.